Being able to read and understand your natal chart is very important. If you didn't already know, the natal chart in astrology is everything. It is literally the blueprint to your life. Your particular natal chart is the blueprint to your life. But what happens if you have no idea how to read your natal chart, or you've looked at your natal chart and you are completely confused? No worries, this video is specifically for you. As a matter of fact, this series of videos is specifically for you. So welcome to part 4 of a 5-part series dedicated to reading your natal chart. Each video will discuss a particular component of the natal chart, and then the 5th and final video will put it all together. And I promise that by the time you finish this series, you will be able to read your natal chart like a pro. And in doing so, you'll not only be able to understand yourself, but your life as well. All right, so this particular video is all about the aspects. So without further ado, let's get into it. What's up, everybody? As always, I hope that this video finds you well and in excellent spirits. If you are new here, welcome. My name is Mel, your new favorite astrologer, and I'm the founder of Divine Feminine Works, where I help people unlock their divinity and discover their magic. And as always, if you are returning, welcome back. So, we're almost near the end of our How to Read Your Natal Chart series. So in part 1, we discussed the planets and how they represent the different topics in our lives. Then in part 2, we discussed the houses, and the houses represent where those different topics in our lives are actually going to play out. Then in part 3, we discussed the zodiac signs and how the zodiac signs give us a little more information on how the planets express themselves in our natal chart. And so today we're going to dive into the aspects and what they mean in our natal chart. All right, so let's just dive right in. So first things first, let's discuss the aspects generally. So the aspects refer to the connections that the planets make to each other within the natal chart. So we've already discussed, or I've already discussed in previous videos, that there are 10 planets within the natal chart. There are 12 houses and 12 zodiac signs. Now, putting those 3 components together can give us a lot of information about our lives, our personalities, the people in our lives, our career, all of the stuff that you actually look to the natal chart for. Those 3 components can tell us a lot. However, the aspect sort of takes it a step further, okay? Gives us more information on those things. So as I mentioned before, each component of the natal chart answers a specific question. So first we learned that the planets represent or ask or answer the question what, as in what is it that we're seeking? Then we learned that the houses answer the question where. Where do we find what we seek? Then we learned that the zodiac signs answer the question how, as in how does that planetary energy play out, right? So the aspects also answer a question, and they also answer the question how, but sort of how in a different sort of way. Again, it gives us further information on the different topics and the different things that we look to in the natal chart. So in my video on the signs, I explained how the signs are a lot more than just their characteristics. They also have this sort of energy frequency, right? There is duplicity, triplicity, and quadruplicity. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, definitely check out that zodiac signs video that dropped last week, right? But same thing with the aspects. Each aspect has its own sort of energy and influence, and there are certain patterns that aspects really speak to, okay? And we're gonna learn a little more about this as this video progresses, right? Suffice it to say that to figure out what these aspects are, we're gonna have to go back to high school algebra and geometry. Okay, nothing too crazy, but there's definitely some math involved. So to figure out what the aspects are, we have to take the full zodiacal circle, which is 360 degrees, and we divide it by different numbers. And those different numbers represent the different aspects, okay? Stay with me. This may be a little complicated, but I will do my best to break it down for you, all right? So in astrology, in totality, there are 11 different aspects. However, I will not be covering all 11 aspects in this video. And the aspects are grouped into 3 different groups. There's the major aspects, the minor aspects, and the lesser used aspects. It's literally called lesser used, which shows you how often they're actually used in natal chart interpretation. But for the purposes of this video, we are going to discuss the 5 major aspects. All right, so let's jump into each individual aspect. All right, so the 5 major aspects that I'm going to be discussing in this video are the conjunction, the opposition, the trine, the square, and the sextile. These are the 5 aspects that you will look for and examine within your natal chart. So we start at the beginning with the conjunction. So remember I said before that to arrive at these aspects, we have to divide 360 degrees, which represents the full circle, by a particular number. So when it comes to conjunctions, you would divide the 360 degrees by 1, okay? So this therefore means that planets that are in conjunction to each other are 0 degrees apart. They're right next to each other. They're occupying the same exact degree, give or take. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. So they're also 0 signs apart because planets in conjunction are exactly in the same sign. So for example, in your natal chart, you may have Venus and Mars both at 2 degrees of Leo. That means that Venus is conjunct to Mars, okay? And Mars is conjunct to Venus. You get what I'm trying to say, right? So what does it mean for planets to be in conjunction? Well, when 2 planets occupy the same degree, it's all about mixing. It's all about synergy. So you take the energy of both planets and you mix them together. Okay, let's take an example of Venus and Mars. Venus is all about money and love and creativity, and Mars is all about action, motivation, your desires. Okay, so you can say that if Venus and Mars are conjunct, that when it comes to love and money, or even when it comes to confrontation or competitiveness, you are very creative. You handle your creativity in a very aggressive manner. You would basically take the energy of both of those planets and you would mix them together. Now, when we're talking about aspects, it's not just the 2 planets or the 2 planetary energies that we're talking about. We're also talking about the sign that we're in. So when you're looking at your natal chart, you're not just going to say, okay, Venus and Mars are conjunct and figure out what that means. You would say Venus and Mars are conjunct in Leo. What does that mean? That's what I mean by these aspects allowing you to get a lot more information, okay? Now, another thing about conjunctions that you need to know, especially if you see this in your natal chart, is that you may have a cluster of planets in the same sign. They may not all be at the exact same degree, but let's say they're each like 2 degrees apart, right? This is what is known as a stellium. A stellium is when you have 3 or more planets smushed together, okay? They don't all have to be at the same degree, but they're all typically in the same sign, and it's known as a stellium. Now, another important point when it comes to aspects generally is that both planets don't have to be at exactly the same degree. So I'm talking about conjunctions right now. Let's say you have Venus at 2 degrees Leo, and then you have Mars at 7 degrees Leo. They would still be considered in conjunction because there's something in astrology called orbs. And orbs basically represent a range, a degree range that would still qualify as that particular aspect. So for instance, the orb for conjunctions is 8 degrees. So if planets are in the same sign and they're within 8 degrees of each other on either side, they're still considered to be in conjunction, okay? I feel like I'm gonna do a video further breaking down aspects and really getting to the nitty-gritty, but like I said, this is just meant to be an overview of the major aspects, all right? So keep in mind that it's not just that the planets have to be at the exact same degree. There's a range of degrees that would still qualify as that aspect, all right? So let's move on to the next one. All right, so next up we have the opposition. And you arrive at an opposition by dividing 360 degrees by 2. So it follows that planets that are in opposition are 180 degrees apart, all right? And if we're talking about signs in the natal chart, planets that are in opposition are typically 6 signs apart. One of the easiest ways to think about oppositions is kind of like a seesaw, right? It's all about extremes. And even in terms of signs, Planets in opposition usually occupy sister signs. So whatever sign one planet is in, if it is in opposition to another, that other planet is typically going to be in that first planet's sister sign. So let's say you have Mercury in Virgo, and then you also have Mars in Pisces. Mercury and Mars are in opposition because not only are they in sister signs, but they are 180 degrees apart. Now, I told you that the aspects fall into different categories, right? There's major, there's minor, there's lesser used. There's also a further classification of aspects, and you have harsh aspects on the one end, and then you have soft aspects on the other. So harsh aspects are what they sound like. They're harsh. It's planets that are at a harsh angle. And typically people like to denote the energy of harsh aspects as like negative, bad, or not so good. Whereas on the other hand, you have soft aspects, which are typically classified as good, as beneficial, and as harmonious, okay? So oppositions are known as a harsh aspect because they pinpoint extremes in our lives, okay? So the example I just gave before, you've got Mercury in Virgo and you've got Mars in Pisces. Mercury and Mars are going to be in opposition, so they're going to represent extremes in our lives. It's almost like a tug of war. It's almost like a seesaw. You've got two different energies sort of vying for attention. So on the one hand, Mercury in Virgo, it's very mercurial, right? It's very logical, very practical. That's what you have on the one end. Then on the other end, you have Mars in Pisces, which it's like, it puts a battery in your back when it comes to your creativity, when it comes to your ability to have faith and your spirituality. So on the one end, you're super analytical with that Mercury in Virgo, but then on the other end, you're very like hyper spiritual, or even spiritual in a way that can be very harsh or aggressive, right? And you've got these two energies vying for attention in your natal chart, or in your life, basically. Pro tip, if you have oppositions in your natal chart, right? One of the best ways to overcome this tug of war energy is to find a happy medium, right? If you are in the middle, right? Think of a seesaw. If the energy is balanced on both sides, you don't have one side really vying for more attention than the other. So find a happy medium between those planetary energies, and that will help you overcome that opposition in your natal chart. All right. So next up, we have the trine. And you arrive at a trine when you divide the 360 degrees by 3. So it follows that planets that are trine are 120 degrees apart. This also means that planets that are in trine are 6 signs apart, all right? So think of trine like a triangle. The triangle is such a powerful symbol in nature, in spirituality, but the most important thing to remember about trines is that it is easy and effortless energy. Trines are when the energy of the planets just flow together peacefully and harmoniously. So I just talked before about the opposition, which is a harsh aspect. So it plays out kind of negatively because you've got energy, the energy of the two planets sort of vying for attention at either extreme. Now contrast that with the trine. The trine is a soft aspect. It's harmonious. It's when planets just flow together effortlessly and easily. It's peace, it's harmony, and it's things happening without you having to exert much effort, okay? So planets that are in trine are going to be in signs of the same element, all right? So that means that you may have Venus in Cancer, and then you've got Mars in Scorpio. Those two planets are going to be trine to each other because number one, they are 4 signs apart. And number 2, they're both in the same element, right? Because Cancer and Scorpio are both water signs, all right? So it flows. It's because they're in the same element, the energy is just naturally conducive, right? It's a natural match. It's a natural pairing, okay? So trines represent easy streets. So wherever you have trines in your chart, it's where you have natural abilities, natural talents, or things in your life just sort of line up almost perfectly without any effort on your part. It's amazing because in my career as an astrologer and looking at so many different natal charts, you know how sometimes you look at someone and you'll be like, oh my gosh, their life is just perfect. Things just flow together. Typically, they will have a lot of trines in their natal chart where things in their life just literally flow together without any effort, or they have natural talents and abilities when it comes to certain areas in their life. So it's kind of like this particular life, they incarnated into something really easy. So maybe in a past life, they did a lot of work. Maybe they overcame a lot in a past life. And then this time around, easy street for them. So trines represent ease and effortless action. All right. So next up, we have the square. And you arrive at a square by dividing the 360 degrees by 4. So it follows that planets that are square to each other are 90 degrees apart. All right. It also follows that planets that are square to each other are typically 3 signs apart, all right? So perfect example, you've got Venus in Cancer and you've got Mars in Libra. Those planets are square to each other, all right? Another tip for you to understand squares a little better is that planets that are in squares are going to be in signs of the same modality, all right? And again, if you have no idea what I mean by modality, definitely check out my signs video. Link will be in the description box below. So if you've got 2 planets that are in cardinal signs, if you've got 2 planets that are in fixed signs, or 2 planets that are in mutable signs, those planets are going to be square to each other because they form 90 degrees. So we talked about oppositions being harsh. We talked about trines being soft. Now we talk about squares, and squares are also harsh because the key word about squares is tension and frustration. Okay. So planets that are in square, it's almost like, it's not quite like an opposition where they're at extremes, but the direction that the planetary energies are trying to go tend to frustrate one another. It provides friction or some sort of tension, okay? Now, people don't typically like squares, and people denote squares as negative, or if you tend to have quite a few squares in your chart, you kind of feel like, damn, my life sucks. There's all this tension and frustration. I'd say the saving grace for squares is that they build character. A lot of the things that we want to achieve in life, where we're going in life, requires us to level up as people at certain points in our lives, right? Squares help build that character, okay? So if you find that you have quite a few squares in your chart, and suffice it to say, but on a personal note, I have a lot of squares in my chart, and it's not as doom and gloom as it seems, right? Although it's tension and frustration, think of it as iron sharpens iron, all right? It helps you build those character traits that you're definitely going to need at certain points in your life or to achieve certain things in your life, all right? And they stretch us. Life can't always be easy street. Even if you're someone that has a lot of trines in your chart, I feel like a square or 2 may pop up, whether it's in your natal chart or whether it's by way of transit, in order to help level you up, okay? Sometimes we need to be stretched into who we need to become to have the things that we want, okay? So don't despair if you have a lot of squares, or if you have a lot of, I wouldn't say a lot of oppositions, although you might have a lot of oppositions. But either way, if you find that you have quite a few harsh aspects in your chart, it's not all doom and gloom. It's actually helping you become the person that you need to be, all right? And then finally, the last aspect that I will discuss is the sextile. So to arrive at a sextile, you have to divide the 360 degrees by 6. So this follows that planets that are in sextile are 60 degrees apart. Planets that are in sextile are also 2 signs apart, all right? So think of a sextile as half of a trine, because that's exactly what it is. So sextiles are also a soft aspect, meaning that they're positive, they're harmonious, they're good, all right? But the difference between a sextile and a trine is that a trine is effortless. You don't have to do anything. It's sort of these natural abilities, right? Whereas a sextile requires a little bit of effort on your part. Nothing too strenuous, nothing too backbreaking, but you're gonna have to take advantage of this planetary alignment in order to reap the benefits, okay? So typically, like in astrology jargon, they'll say that sextiles really represent latent talents. So talents that you may not have developed, you'll have to put in a little effort to sort of bring those to the surface in order to reap the benefits that the sextile provides, all right? But long story short, sextiles in your natal chart really denote opportunities. It denotes latent talents and abilities that may come forth, especially positive abilities and positive opportunities that'll come forth with just a little bit of effort on your part, all right? All right, my love, so that has been the aspects in a nutshell, and I really mean a nutshell because, again, I could talk for hours about each individual aspect. I could talk about the minor aspects, the lesser known aspects, which I might do in some further videos. So let me know in the comments below if you'd be interested in learning about all of that stuff, all right? So this has been the aspects. Definitely tune in next week because finally we're gonna wrap this series up with a beautiful bow when we put it all together. So we are going to look at some natal charts and analyze them with the information that we've learned in the last couple of videos in this series. Like, I'm seriously so excited to bring this video to you. So that being said, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you know exactly when that next video drops, all right? And I'm so excited because once this series is over, I truly believe that you guys will be able to read your natal chart, and you'll be able to do so in a way that not only makes sense to you, but gives you the information that is so vital that the natal chart provides, all right? Again, I'm super excited about that. So thank you so much for tuning in. Again, don't forget to tune in next week for the final and 5th video in this series, and I will see you next time, all right? Thanks for watching and take care.